Hello everyone, thank you for that introduction. My name is Gita Toyserkani and I will be talking today about ongoing initiatives to standardize REMS and integrate REMS into the US healthcare system. The learning objectives for this presentation are to describe FDA's ongoing REMS standardization efforts, to understand the importance of standardization and integration as it relates to REMS, and to discuss opportunities and challenges in integrating REMS into the healthcare system. Let me start off by acknowledging that healthcare system is complex, especially in the US, where we do not have a national electronic health information infrastructure. Having a robust and integrated healthcare system is vital. And this is even more evident given the current pandemic we're in today. Our healthcare system is more taxed, and this has impacted all areas of healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry, including drugs for which there are REMS in place. We have had to consider how we deal with certain REMS safe use conditions in light of the need to social distance, and consider how we leverage health IT and digital technology, such as telemedicine, to continue supporting these safe use conditions. As discussed in the previous presentation, REMS programs have two intents. One is to spread knowledge, which is the risk communication arm, and the other is to integrate interventions or strategies to ensure safe use of the drug, which are the risk mitigation measures such as the elements to ensure safe use or ETASU. Since 2008, when the first REMS was approved, and today, there are 57 currently approved REMS programs. And we have solicited and received stakeholder feedback over the past 12 years on how we can standardize risk communication and better integrate the risk mitigation strategies into the healthcare system. This slide is just to illustrate some of those efforts. In 2011, the FDA created the REMS Integration Initiative. This was followed by the public meeting on REMS Standardization. There were other meetings held on understanding the impact of access and burden. In October of 2016, the REMS SPL pilot program was initiated, which I will spend a little bit of time during this presentation talking about. And there was the Duke Margolis public meeting held on the REMS platform standards. The REMS SPL Guidance was published. We also had the REMS Platform Standards Initiative Needs Assessment that was put out for comments. The draft guidance on the format and content of a REMS document was also published in 2017. And then this past December, the agency put out an RFI, or request for information, on a REMS web portal. These efforts have focused on developing techniques to standardize REMS and integrate REMS into the existing healthcare system. As mentioned before, all of these efforts were initiated and developed with stakeholder input, many of those which are not reflected on this slide. And if you want to learn more about each of these efforts, there are hyperlinks on this slide, so you can access and learn more about each of these efforts later. Now I would like to spend some time talking about the REMS standardization efforts related to communicating REMS information. The three projects that I will focus on are standardizing the REMS document, standardizing and integrating REMS information using structured product labeling, and then briefly remind all of the REMS at FDA website, where you can find information about all of the REMS programs implemented in the US. The REMS document is the main piece of material that describes the REMS requirements for all REMS participants, such as the prescribers, the pharmacists, and the patients. As you can see on the right side of the slide, in 2017, FDA released the draft guidance on the format and content of the REMS document in order to standardize the way the REMS information is communicated across all REMS programs and make it easier for stakeholders to find the information and ensure that the information is conveyed in a consistent and standardized manner. We have received comments to the docket on this guidance, and based on the experience over the past 2.5 years, we're in the process of finalizing this guidance. This slide is to illustrate how the REMS document is structured It is organized in what we have referred to as the 4 W's of REMS. In the past presentation, you have seen this as well. The information is organized in a tabular format based on the target audience. So in this case, the who is the healthcare providers who prescribe. On the right-hand side, you have the activities that are required, the what. And then on the left-hand side is the timing category of when those activities are expected to occur. And then with what are the materials or the tools that the participants in the REMS would be using. As mentioned, the guidance was published October 2017. So nearly 2.5 years after the issuance of that guidance, over 50% of the REMS are in the new format. So currently, as you can see, there are 57 approved REMS. 31 of the REMS documents are in the new format, and this consists of 12 new REMS programs approved over this time period and 19 conversions. And then there are 4 additional ones that are in the process of being converted. 22 of the currently approved REMS are still in the old format, and we would love to see these converted too. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about SPL. So SPL stands for Structured Product Labeling. It is a data standard for capturing information about drug products, but covers product information beyond the labeling and is being used to standardize how REMS are described. SPL is developed and maintained by a standards development organization called Health Level 7 International. And SPL can be used to capture and present REMS information in a format that is easily shared with stakeholders and readily incorporated into health information technology by health IT vendors. The way it works is that SPL data is transmitted from the sponsor to the FDA and is used both on the REMS.FDA website for public and the patients. It is also made available in the National Library of Medicine repository, where it can be picked up by healthcare information suppliers and health IT vendors for healthcare providers. Keep in mind that sponsors already submit labeling information in this format, but using it for REMS, it will allow the REMS information and the REMS requirements to be incorporated into EHR systems, pharmacy systems, clinical decision support tools to improve stakeholder awareness and compliance with the REMS. The REMS SPL really starts with a standardized REMS document. And there are machine-readable codes that are associated with the information in this standardized format that can help the uptake of REMS information by health IT vendors and drug information vendors. One important takeaway is that if your REMS document is not in the new format, you will need to create REMS summary tables in order to be able to submit your REMS in SPL. The REMS SPL guidance was published in fall of 2017. This guidance and the SPL implementation guide, which I've provided a link in the resource slide at the end of the presentation, describe the requirements for the electronic submission of the content for the REMS SPL submission. FDA is now finalizing the draft guidance. 2 years from publishing of the final guidance, the requirements will take effect, which means all REMS must be submitted in SPL. Of the 57 currently approved REMS, less than 1% have been submitted in SPL format. So unfortunately, there has not been a huge adoption. We are hoping that once the guidance is finalized, that there will be more uptake by sponsors in submitting the REMS in SPL format. Another effort that the FDA has undertaken to standardize how REMS information is communicated and make it more centralized is the REMS.FDA website. The new website was launched in 2015 and updated in 2017. The website provides a list of all approved REMS. If you open a link to a specific REMS, it will provide links to the REMS document and the approved REMS materials for that individual program. If you look at the column headings that's circled in red, you can see that the user is able to sort by approval date so that they can easily find the most recent REMS approval. Another great feature of the website is the ability to sign up for REMS email alerts. You just click the link that you see circled at the top and enter your email address to receive automatic REMS updates. Okay, so for our first challenge question, to submit your REMS in SPL to the FDA, it is necessary to A, have your REMS document in the new format. B, create a REMS summary if your REMS document is in the old format. C, the format of your REMS document does not matter. Or D, A and B. The answer is D, A and B. To submit your REMS in SPL, it is necessary to either have your REMS document in the new format, or if your REMS document is in the old format, you will need to create a REMS summary. Challenge question number 2. Sponsors will be required to submit the REMS document in SPL within A, 1 year from publication of the final guidance, B, 2 years from publication of the final guidance, C, it is already in effect, or D, never. And the answer is B. So sponsors will be required to submit the REMS document in SPL within 2 years from publication of the final guidance. The next set of slides will focus on the efforts related to integrating REMS into the healthcare system. I will focus on leveraging health data standards, provide some examples such as the NCPDP standard, and discuss FDA's REMS Web Portal initiative. To understand the importance of integration, I want to remind us what some of the REMS requirements are, specifically focusing on REMS with elements to assure safe use, or ETASUs. These programs often require prescribers and pharmacists to complete certain tasks under the REMS requirements, such as completing training, or enrolling, monitoring, or counseling patients, or verifying and documenting certain safe use conditions. If you look on the graph on the right, of the 49 currently approved REMS with ETASU, they have at least one or more of these requirements, adding to the burden to the healthcare providers and the patients who are the ones carrying out these activities. Also keep in mind that REMS with ETASU, although developed by sponsors, these are health intervention programs, and as such need to be part of the clinical workflow. Current REMS require healthcare providers to go outside of their workflow, and this may potentially impact a healthcare provider's decision to prescribe a drug. Some of the key consideration for integration when designing and developing a REMS program is to understand the stakeholder needs and workflow. So seek input. It is important to understand the healthcare providers and patients' preferences in how they receive information, understand the setting and the workflow and the barriers for them to carry out these tasks. Another key consideration is that there are established standards developed by standards development organizations that can be leveraged. So make sure that the systems you're putting in place or the technologies you're using are compatible with the existing health technologies. And healthcare technology, as we all know, is continuously evolving. Therefore, REMS should be implemented and designed to be flexible to adapt to changes in the healthcare system and new technologies. Who knew that in 2020 we would be doing everything virtually? And finally, think of equal access and the need for a multimodal approach. Make sure that the people and the various healthcare settings that do not have access to certain technologies are also able to participate in the REMS program and be able to comply with the safe use conditions. This slide is just to ground us in what we mean with health data standards. So these are a common way of electronically communicating health information, and they allow healthcare providers to work together in a large and increasingly electronic healthcare system. A couple of things to keep in mind: these standards are not developed by FDA or government, but rather by standards development organizations like NCPDP and HL7. And once they're developed, they need to be adopted by stakeholders, such as the healthcare providers, the EHR vendors, and also the REMS programs. When the first REMS was approved in 2008, there were less than 10% of prescribers e-prescribing. If you look on the graph on the right, in 2018, there were 73% of prescribers using e-prescribing and 99% of pharmacists using e-prescribing. Most REMS, unfortunately, have not leveraged health data standards, and it's perhaps not surprising since the first REMS was approved in 2008, and at that time, e-prescribing was not prevalent. However, things are changing, and REMS programs need to be designed with that in mind moving forward. The National Council for Prescription Drug Programs has developed a telecommunication standard. or what is commonly referred to as the switch system. This is originally a communication between pharmacies and payers, but now is being leveraged to transmit REMS information. The first REMS to use the pharmacy switch system was approved in 2011. Currently, there are 6 programs that leverage the switch system to send relevant REMS information to the REMS administrator or the sponsor. However, this is a telecommunication standard that is mainly used in retail pharmacy settings at this point. This slide is to illustrate how the switch works. Many REMS require pharmacists to verify certain safe use conditions prior to dispensing a drug. For example, a pharmacist may verify that the patient monitoring has been done before dispensing. With the switch system, the pharmacist does not have to leave his or her workflow and check a website or make a phone call. Basically, the pharmacist enters the claim information into their computer as they normally would. The pharmacy system sends this claim to a switch, who instead of sending the claim to the insurer, first sends relevant information to a REMS administrator. If the safe use conditions are in place, then the claim moves on to the insurer. Otherwise, the pharmacist receives an error message. Some benefits of adopting the switch is that it allows for evaluation of prescriber, pharmacy, and patient enrollment. It also allows verification of safe use conditions. It minimizes disruption of existing workflows by being built into the pharmacy management system, and also being integrated in the billing process at the point of dispensing may allow hard stops. Some of the challenges with adoption of the switch is that obviously there's an associated cost. Each submission to the switch, or otherwise known as the ping, has an associated cost with it, and sometimes there are multiple back and forth communications that occur or multiple pings. It also may not be a cost-effective or viable option for other pharmacy settings other than retail. And also, it does not address prescriber workflow issues. This is predominantly just focused on the pharmacy system. The NCPDP has also led an effort to further the use of standards in REMS into their e-prescribing standard called SCRIPT. SCRIPT is a standard for facilitating transmission of prescription data between prescribers, pharmacies, intermediaries, and payers. The new version of the NCPDP SCRIPT standard implementation guide includes REMS transactions into e-prescribing and EHRs to help document safe use conditions. The new NCPDP SCRIPT standard includes REMS transactions. The system allows REMS administrators to present prescribers with a question set, similar to those used in prior authorization. For example, the system can verify opioid tolerance in patient and document that the REMS safe use conditions have been met for that prescription. The benefit of using this standard is that not only does it reduce the burden on the physician to verify unobtained authorization, which in some cases might deter them from prescribing altogether, but it also verifies the safe use condition upstream in real time, so the burden does not fall on the pharmacist at the time of dispensing and delay patient access. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, actually mandates the adoption of the new version of NCPDP SCRIPT standard for Medicare prescription drug benefit Part D prescribing. REMS is one transaction named by CMS for use to promote patient safety and to enable REMS requirements to be completed within the existing workflow. And this particular part of the mandate actually went into effect this January. Some benefits in adopting the SCRIPT standard are that it allows for real-time verification of safe use conditions. It can also be integrated into EHR systems, and verification of the safe use conditions can be completed upstream to avoid delays at the pharmacy. Some challenges in adoption are that it is currently only required for Medicare Part D e-prescribing, but we hope that others will follow suit. The other challenge is compatibility and interoperable systems between entities, and the fact that there are different EHR systems. And although this standard can be used in inpatient, it's predominantly used in retail setting. So what else is FDA doing to further REMS standardization and integration? Well, FDA is working with standards development organizations to support further standardization and integration initiatives. We also support adoption of REMS standards by REMS administrators, EHRs, third-party payers, and software vendors. The FDA is also evaluating the feasibility of a REMS web portal. Here's some information about the REMS web portal initiative. The agency put out an RFI, or request for information, in December 2019 for the REMS web portal, and responses to additional questions were posted January of this year. And the purpose of the RFI is to broaden FDA's understanding of the market's capability to provide a REMS web portal, either as a solution requiring potential development of a technology or existing commercially available applications. Here is a conceptual framework of what we envision. The REMS web portal would allow REMS participants, including healthcare providers that prescribe and dispense drugs with REMS requirements, to enroll, complete, and renew REMS certification requirements and/or document via this REMS web portal. The REMS participant would be able to verify safety conditions for any drug subject to REMS requirements through a single sign-on mechanism. And the system would allow for data sharing across existing REMS program websites and databases via the REMS web portal platform. This is our third and final challenge question. When designing a REMS, sponsors should consider all of the following except: A, design REMS to be compatible with clinical workflows; B, seek input from REMS stakeholders; C, design a REMS that does not leverage health IT; or D, work with standards development organizations. And the answer is C. So when designing a REMS, you actually want to leverage health IT. So some next steps, we have received feedback on the REMS web portal RFI and are considering next steps. We are also considering future public meetings to prioritize additional REMS standardization projects. Finally, we are interested to hear from sponsors that are interested in implementing or are implementing REMS standards such as the NCPDP script standard. In summary, FDA encourages sponsors to submit the REMS in SPL format to enable integration into the care process. We also encourage sponsors to seek input from healthcare providers and patients to better understand how they prefer to receive information and also understand the clinical workflow and barriers. There are existing standards such as NCPDP, HL7. These were just some examples. There are others that can be used to integrate REMS into pharmacy systems and EHRs. And it is important to adopt these existing standards in the design and the development of a REMS. Finally, we are interested to hear whether you have implemented REMS standards, again, such as the new NCPDP script standard, or if there are other health IT initiatives, technologies, or standards for REMS that we should be considering. Here are just some links to additional resources for you. And this completes my presentation. Thank you so much, and I'll take any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Gita, so much for that fantastic presentation, very informative. We're now going to take questions from the audience. So if anybody out there has questions, make sure you put them in the lower right pod, and we will screen them and try to get to as many as possible. So let's get to our first question for Gita. Do you feel that the advancement of information technology IT, such as cloud computing, new coding languages, and the prevalence of many more application program interfaces, APIs, and web services made available by businesses in the healthcare industry are advancing at a pace to meet the needs of a REMS WP?
That is a great question. We feel that the information technology infrastructure to host highly available APIs via cloud-based infrastructure has advanced to a level that would greatly expand the capabilities for REMS web portal and greatly reduce the burden of REMS implementation on all stakeholders, including sponsors, prescribers, pharmacists, and other healthcare providers. And standard development organizations such as NCPDP and HL7 are both working on standards to assist with these newer types of platforms and data interchange.
Okay, great. All right, our next question is, do you foresee more sponsors participating by submitting their REMS via structured product labeling, SPL?
So to date, we have not had many sponsors participate by submitting the REMS in the SPL format. But it is important to note that electronic submission requirements take effect 2 years from the publishing of the final guidance. And as I mentioned in the presentation, FDA is now in the process of finalizing that guidance.
All right, great answer. Are you seeing that the REMS documents in old formats, are they being converted to the new standardized format?
Well, thank you for that question. So preferably applicants convert their REMS document into the new format with a submission of a major modification. In some cases, the agency will require an applicant to update the REMS document as part of a required major modification. Again, please remember that 2 years after the SPL guidance is finalized, all REMS must be submitted in SPL. And eventually, we hope all REMS are converted into the new format, as it makes it offers a substantial improvement to the old format as well.
Okay, great. And our next question, is the SPL an international standard across other regulatory bodies as well as FDA?
SPL is not an international standard, but it is used by the FDA to structure the format and content of labeling and submission of information into the electronic drug registration and listing systems, or EDRLs, for use in electronic databases and healthcare IT systems. REMS implementation will benefit greatly by the structuring and standardizing allowed by the use of REMS SPL, and helps decrease the burden across all stakeholders, including sponsors, prescribers, pharmacists, and patients, by helping to improve access.
All right, very good. All right, can you talk a little bit about the use of packaging in REMS? Is this considered an ETASU, or is that a separate and distinct part of REMS?
I think you're asking about the authorities related to REMS provided as part of the Support Act, which my colleagues will talk a little bit later after this presentation. The packaging requirements included are not ETASUs, but considered a separate part of the REMS.
Great, thank you. All right, you described the statistics on conversion into a new format. Who's responsible for the conversion? Is it the sponsor or the agency?
Sure, happy to clarify this point. The applicants and the agency work together on the conversion. Applicants are able to proactively submit the REMS document in the new format, as mentioned before, preferably as part of a major modification. As with all modifications, the agency reviews the revised REMS submission, including the REMS document, and we offer additional edits to ensure the REMS requirements are appropriately represented. Very good.
Thank you so much. All right, our next question is, when do you foresee the final guidance for SPL going to be published? Unless that was the one in 2017 you were referring to in your presentation.
Right, so the agency is actively working to finalize the guidance, but I'm not able to provide an exact date when that final guidance will be published.
All right. And our next question is about health IT. So what if the health IT is different across healthcare systems? How do you balance the need for integrating REMS with the existing health IT and the need for consistency of implementing REMS across systems?
That is a great question, and we recognize some of the challenges. I would say the first step is to develop standards. Standards are really key, so regardless of the systems or settings, you are able to exchange information regardless of the different systems or the different settings. So I would say standardization is really critical in overlapping some of these challenges with different health IT systems.
All right, great. Very good. And the next question is, I believe you referred to the switch. If you can discuss a little bit more, what is the quote-unquote switch?
Sure. So the switch is the NCPDP's telecommunication standard that's used in pharmacy management systems, and it's a standard to communicate information between pharmacies and payers. And that's something that's been leveraged by some of the REMS programs. As I mentioned, in 2011, the first REMS, that was the first REMS approved with leveraging that switch system, which is the NCPDP telecommunication standard. And since then, I believe we have right now 6 current programs that leverage what we quote-unquote call the switch, which is, again, the telecommunication standard used between the pharmacies and payers, but it's being used to communicate information to the REMS administrator as an intermediate step before it goes to the payer.
All right, thank you very much. All right, our next question, and again, for all of the participants, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the chat pod and we'll try to get to them. So if a universal REMS portal is developed, will unique sponsor websites still be required?
The goal of the REMS web portal is to provide a single sign-on environment to help ease the burden of stakeholders for initially enrolling or participating in a particular REMS program. Sponsors may still need to have their individual websites to allow for that component of the REMS to be met.
Okay, great. And to build upon that question, what is the status of the REMS web portal? What's coming?
Great question. The RFI was submitted by FDA in December 2019, and currently we're reviewing the response to the RFIs.
Okay, great. And our next question, will the 39% REMS available in the old format, will that be converted to the new format?
That is our goal. However, we recognize that REMS would also benefit mostly from this new format, since the participant requirements are organized in these tabular structure by the participant and identified when each requirement must be completed.
Okay, great. And since we have so many questions coming in, I want to pause and give Gita a second to see if there's, take a breath and review some of the questions to see if there's anything specific. But until then, we do have one question. Is the list of FDA approved REMS listed by manufacturer or sponsor name?
Let me see if I understand the question. So REMS are listed by brand or established name on the REMS.FDA website.
All right, great. And I think we'll just go ahead and pause for a moment and see, let a couple more questions come in. And if we don't get a lot more questions, then we'll go ahead and move to our next. Just a reminder, if you have more questions, go ahead and put them in our chat. All right, it looks like we have a few more questions coming in, so we'll go ahead and get started with those. Again, to Gita, would using the script standard become mandatory at a certain point?
So CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services in the U.S. Mandates this new script standard and actually went into effect this January of this year for Medicare Part D prescriptions. So it has already become mandatory for a subset, but we're hoping that others will basically follow suit now that it has become mandatory for Medicare Part D prescriptions.
Okay, great. And another question for you. Is the switch FDA's preferred method if it's possible to place into a REMS?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Is the switch FDA's preferred method if it's possible if you're converting something into a
So the agency is not endorsing one particular standard or integration method. I think we're open to any, especially new technologies that are out there. This is one that we are giving as an example that has been leveraged to date by applicants, and it's a standard that has been utilized in REMS, but we basically aren't endorsing a specific standard at this point.
Great, thank you. And I think we have one last question. When it comes to auditing REMS, especially those with ATASUs and implementation systems, what are FDA's expectations with frequency, sample size? For example, would FDA consider risk-based audit programs, or do they have standards for minimum requirements? Again, for example, 10% of all settings.
That's a great question. The frequency and sample size are currently handled on a case-by-case basis, taking into account a number of factors such as the number of pharmacies involved in the REMS. Typically, we require that audits are done initially and on an annual basis, but this question is probably more suited for our tomorrow morning's presentation by Dr. Off and Dr. Harris, who will be able to provide you with more of a complete answer to this question.
All right, thank you so much. That was a lot of questions, and you aced them all, so thank you so much for all of your attention and detail to those, as well as a great presentation. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next speaker.